Hi guys, so I've been taking something of a sabbatical from day gaming and dating, and I'm actually still marooned on the number 34, even though it's now February. And that's because I've just had so many girls on the radar dish, and it's just been crazy just going out and collecting numbers and day gaming girls when I really need to focus on the dates that I've got, so it seems to me. So I've suspended day game operations, and I have been trying to set up dates with these girls. And this weekend, I went to Russia to try and get dates with 3 girls. All a little bit of a logistical exercise, travelling to prospective dates. And so, surprise, surprise, one of them flaked. And that one was actually a girl I'm calling a minibar girl because of the mysterious goings on of a very large minibar bill that ended up on my bill at a hotel a few months ago, but which I forgive her for because it was the most fantastic sex with a genuinely hot girl that I've ever had, really, to be fair. Anyway, she flaked. She's actually climbing the money tree, and she thinks that I'm a tasty piece of money fruit. And when she started to suggest that I might buy a laptop computer on the way over, I started money grabbing alarm signal started to go haywire, and obviously, but you know what? I forgive girls for that. For that, I mean, it's not. I'm actually thinking, well, so what? And actually, a guy said that you should actually try and meet these girls and play along with the game a little bit. Turn up with some sort of a gift to indicate that you are prepared to play that little bit of a game. So anyway, she flaked. I had 2 dates, one after the other, on Saturday afternoon and evening, and I'm going to tell you first about the second date, because the first one went very well, but you learn more from painful experiences, and the second date was a particularly painful experience. And you know what, I'd finished this first date, which was a dream, and this particular girl, this is the third date with this particular girl, and she is, proper hot in my book. She's an 8, and she's blonde, beautiful, got these lovely piercing kind of Russian, blue Russian eyes, dresses nice, and I had got her out on 2 dates previously, and both of them are logistic nightmares, because she seems to work 7 days a week, so she says, as a private English teacher, and she's forever commuting and driving around to meet her students. So she can she always seems to be able to, she's willing to meet, but it's always a very short, stupid kind of date, really, like once on a Thursday, and she always has to catch her bus at the end of the date, so she's kind of only there for about an hour, 15 minutes, an hour and a half. I've had 3 dates with her, and none of them have lasted longer than, I would say, 80 minutes, hour and a half, tops. So now I was hoping actually to sort of make more of an evening of it. I bought a bottle of wine, I bought some chocolate. I was suggesting had she eaten after, because she was finishing work very late. She finished work at 9 o'clock on a Saturday night, would you believe? So we actually met for the date at 9 o'clock. I was actually, after the first dream date, hoping that she'd flake, quite frankly, because I didn't want to go through another date after a long day on a Saturday night at 9:30, particularly with this particular girl who's hard work. Anyway, I showed willing, went along, and the first disaster was that the pub that we arranged to meet was closed. So she was standing outside messaging me, "I'm cold." Because I was actually running 15 minutes late, because she's such a notorious flaker. I didn't expect to actually be on, her to be on time. She's on time outside the pub, and there's this pub in this Russian city, and she is like moaning about being a bit cold, and what do I do now? Classic kind of princessy type behaviour, I guess. I tell her to get her ass to another bar that I know. Fortunately, I've done my logistical work and checked out a few bars in the area. Now, I've been over there before, and I I end up turning up at this bar, and it's a fucking nightmare, this place. It's up its own arse. It's like very ultra posh. And I walked in, I said just as a meeting spot, just hang out there in the reception. Anyway, she'd got right into the depths of this high-end bar, and she'd already had her coat taken down into the cloakroom. They won't let you into the bar unless you've handed them your coat. Anyway, I went into the bar, and I pulled her out basically, which she wasn't at all happy about. And then we went to a dirty pub basically, and I took her down these steps, and it was packed. It was a bit smoky, a bit smelly, and I took her all the way through to the end. And the barman I know, and I said, look, have you got a couple of seats at the bar? And he was yeah, I'll arrange you something. But Svetlana turned and announced that this place was smelly and she was leaving. So I followed her out the bar. Fortunately, I had a third option, plan C. And fortunately, this was ideal because there was a couple of nice big throne-like chairs. It was almost as if it was made for us in a cosy little corner, and it wasn't too rammed. And I mean, for Saturday night at 9:30, and we sat down at in these big kind of throne-like chairs with big backs, sumptuous sort of velvet backs to them, across a little table. Now, in spite of that, I was a bit knocked and a bit annoyed at this stage. Through, I just felt that I'd lost the frame. That here I was, and she'd also announced as we were walking around from one bar to the next that she only had 40 minutes. That her bus was like, she's looking at her watch already, and then the whole palaver with this place that insisted that they take my jacket, and then the pub, and then all the rest of it. So I was a bit of a knock to me. We sat down on these chairs, and I was just like, I've got nothing in the tank, mate. Questions. It was the worst date in living history. I would have just sort of started asking her questions. She asked me questions. There were long, awkward silences. We didn't know what to say to each other. I don't know why. What did you use today? Oh, I don't want to talk about it. Oh, okay. Right. What's your favourite? I went to the cinema with a friend. Oh, okay. What did you see? Oh, it was a Russian film. Okay. Well, I'm not going to have much of a conversation about that, but I'll try anyway. What was the subject? Oh, basketball. Oh, really? Yeah, about a Russian basketball team. Oh, I said, that's interesting. Who was the main character? Tell me a little about the story. Oh, no, I don't want to. She said, no. Or she went, no. So it was like that. What's your favourite film was about the best that you get. And it turned into me just asking sort of questions, but knowing that that's a very dull recipe for a date. And just sort of at points, just two of us just saying nothing, and just started sort of hating the whole situation, thinking, what the hell am I doing on this date in a Russian city in February? It's freezing my bollocks off with a princess who's just not giving me any assistance at all and trying to date her, who's just told me that she's only got 40 minutes and she's fucking off. So I mean, I was alright. And then it was there's nothing more unpleasant than a bad date, is there? There's nothing more unpleasant than a dry date where you're just staring at each other. It was like being back to the old chode days of dating girls, and then the Jack in the Box demon in my head started to work away and saying, you're hopeless. You've been doing this. You've been on 34 dates. You haven't got a clue. Over 70 dates actually. 34 first dates. You've learnt bugger all. You're 50. It's too late for you anyway. What are you doing, running around a foreign city, going on dates with girls, half of whom don't speak a word of English, and it's just like pushing a glacier back up wherever it came. So an old familiar voice, from the past about not being successful with attractive, hot women. And actually, that's why we're in it. That's why I'm in it. Anyway, bizarrely, a book came to mind, and I've been buying dating and seduction books recently because I'm writing my own and I want to compare and contrast, and I'm also just interested in reading, obviously, about the subject. And I've picked up, when I was last in London, a book off the bookshelf in a Waterstones or some big chain, Borders or Waterstones, whatever it was, of Kezia Noble, The Noble Art of Seducing Women. Now, Kezia Noble is someone that, in my first book, I've advised guys not to go and get dating coaching from Kezia Noble, and I think I stand by that. She's just an attractive, hot-looking girl, and guys are just kidding themselves, particularly beginners, if they're going to go and take coaching and counselling from Kezia Noble in order to be good with women. It doesn't seem to fit right with me. Nevertheless, I have been reading this book and I've found it surprisingly good and on the money. And during my hour of need with this Russian bird, some stuff came to mind. There's a section where she goes through her nine-point system. And one of them is opinions, and how as men we don't express strong opinions. We're afraid to express too strong opinions. And I don't know how I stumbled onto this and how it sort of popped into my head, but the conversation had moved on to, it was quite an embarrassing little moment. I asked her whether or not she'd ever considered living in another country. And she was totally, no, never, not, so much sort of frame testing going on when I think about it. I'm not interested in living in another country. I love it here. I don't like metropolitan places like big cities like London, New York. And why do you ask? And of course the implication was, and I was being a little bit needy because I was sort of saying to her, in a way, I guess, my subconscious was sort of saying, would you be prepared to live outside Russia so we could get married, or we can have a proper relationship? And she knew that, she was picking up on that, and she was pressing my, soft part to see whether or not I squirmed and gave up and threw in the towel. Because this stuff is a game. Crikey, you've got to accept the fact that this is a game. At this stage of the dating dance, and you've got to conquer the girl. It's as simple as that. She wants to be conquered, and this is what she was doing. Looking back, I didn't realise that as much then as I do now. But looking back in retrospect, that is what was going on. The whole thing. Bouncing to a different bar, complaining about this, giving me a little limited time, a time limit on the date. Sitting there staring at me, waiting, almost sort of like saying, give me your best shot. I'm here on a third date. I've gone nowhere with her up to this point, hardly physically, haven't kissed her. This is not looking kind of good in the escalation stakes. There's no question of me sort of trying to grab her hand. I'm just trying to sort of make bloody conversation with the girl and this is when, as I say, the Kezia Noble stuff came to mind, because that's all about conversation skills, and where she's coming from is a night game type arena, which is actually quite good. When I borrowed, because I'm on a dating project. It's not about how the tricks, the techniques of how to get numbers of girls in the street. This is just simply like any sort of dating situation where you're just learning how to do a date, how to have a conversation with a girl at night. And so I was like, and then I just sort of remembered this opinion thing, and I flipped it round, and I think that in many ways I've learnt stuff and I don't realise how much I have actually learned, because it's almost as if the old chode is still there like a ghost in the machine, and you haven't quite, and even though you've moved on and the skills and the sort of person you are has changed, nevertheless it takes a while to lay the ghost of the past to rest. This ghost of the character, the spirit showed the character to rest. And then and he's got, it's the Jack in the Box going away in your ear telling you that you're a failure. You're not one of those guys. Give up. So I said to her, well, you know what, I said, quite frankly, there's a lot of people, a lot of Russian girls I've seen in the city who want to get out. And I'll tell you, when I was actually just living in staying in another part of the city, I would walk past the university and looked into the windows of the university every morning as I was going for my coffee. And it was packed with girls. There were very few boys, and they were all studying their nuts off. And you know what? They were all trying to escape this god-awful city to go to the west, yeah? And tell me, isn't it true that a lot of girls here are actually wanting to escape? And I'm just surprised, I said, that's why I asked, because it seems to me an anomaly that you wouldn't want to go and have a fresh and more promising life in the West. And I said, isn't that right? I mean, don't. In fact, a lot of the girls here are looking to get out. And I put some sort of passion into my opinion that I was expressing, which I really believed to be true. And I'd spoken to other guys in that city who described similar things. These girls want to get out. The political situation is terrible. It's economically barren. It's an ugly city. And she said, yeah, maybe you're right. And then that led on to another thing, and 2 of the 9 things I'll share with you in this Kezia Noble 9 things system. One is not being afraid to hold and express a strong opinion. And another is, particularly when you're challenged by a girl like I was, is testing you. And another one is telling a story. And I now sort of told the story, and she needled me a little bit more. She went, so what are you doing here? Because I was only over for 2 nights. She tested me on that, like, well, what are you doing here? And I actually then told her the story of, I said, well, the Brits are globetrotters, we travel, I've got friends who travel. We're almost more comfortable travelling the world, being colonialists, than we are staying at home. It's here, I guess, it's more an introspective type society, and you don't often leave. Is that right? Yeah, no, I've never left Russia, Oh, right. So, yeah, and you know what, when I was a kid, I went to a school, a boarding school, that was actually founded by the East India Company, which is actually the company. And here's another thing, demonstrating knowledge and insights into the world. They owned India, basically, but before the place became part of the British Empire, it was just sort of a big trading marketplace for the British. And then the East India Company pretty much, was responsible for the foundation of modern Indian state. It doesn't matter. It doesn't make perfect sense, and it's not bloody university history professor level of accuracy. You're just telling a story, and you're demonstrating intelligence to a hot girl who probably hasn't got a clue. And so I told this elaborate story about how this boarding school, which is where I went, had 50 boys in one dormitory. 50 boys in one dormitory. And I said the whole point of Haileybury College was to toughen men up so that they could then become ambassadors or politicians, diplomats, and work in India for the East India Trading Company, because Haileybury was founded by the East India Trading Company. She'd perked up by this point. She said, oh, what, you mean like the military? I said, yeah, it was very military, but not military. We weren't being trained as soldiers. We were actually being trained to run the British Empire. Yeah. And she asked a couple more questions. And then I noticed that I was, these big throne chairs, I was sitting like with one leg up, and I was leaning back. Occasionally I'd lean forward, and I did actually lean forward and took a hand, which I didn't expect that she'd let me. She'd been so frosty. And I actually, before I took her hand, I paid her a compliment because she was actually looking, really nice. I said, "You look really attractive tonight. I love your little earrings with a little bell in them." And I leant forward, and she actually let me touch her earrings. And then I said, "Oh, I love your big buttons on your black jacket. Is it a new one? I don't think, it looks really sharp. What does sharp mean?" And I explained to what sharp was. And I took her hand and I started to play. Didn't do too much hand work, but she was actually quite embarrassed, and she let me stroke them, but then she took them away because they're not manicured, she said. She was actually really quite self-conscious about that. And she's really self-conscious about appearance, and she actually said, "Well, perhaps I've lost a bit of weight." And so suddenly the vibe of the situation had changed. And as I say, I was sitting there on this throne with my leg up, quite relaxed, leaning back, and she said, "Oh, you look like a king." And with a smile on her face, and I said, "Oh, you look like a queen in our thrones." Now, but she'd at the 40-minute time constraint, but had now extended to sort of 70 minutes. She said, "Oh, I've missed my bus, but it's all right, I can catch another one." So she's got a 10:30 bus. She had me on a proper time constraint, but at least I had an hour and a half date with her, or an hour and 15, and which was, I don't know, mini progress perhaps. And so that's how I asked for the bill. I kept focused on the time. I wanted to be in control and bring the date to an end in time for her to catch her bus. In the event, it actually, isn't it crazy? It was horribly awkward at the beginning. By the end, the ice was breaking slightly, melting slightly, and I actually had a fun little bit at the end where I asked her to paint me a picture of, which is something I like to do, paint me the picture of her dream life. And actually I didn't. On this instance, I said, "What if you were on a desert island? What man would you take? What would you eat? What food would you have? And what book would you take?" A kind of desert island discs thing. And at that point, she told me it's Jason Statham is the man, or Sylvester Stallone. And she then produced a photograph of Sylvester Stallone from the 70s in a jacket with big lapels and a kipper tie. I think he had a moustache, and it was just he was so unlike Sylvester Stallone. And a photo next to it of her father, obviously something she's got in her phone. And I know that she adores her father. And she was dying to show me this photograph at the end. Then we had to scurry. I was the gentleman, got the coats, paid the bill, put her into her coat, and she kissed me on the side of the mouth, cheek, and then she scurried off because she said, "Oh God, I really am late," and she actually was about to, in danger of missing a bus, and she started to run off into the night. So what I concluded from all of this was that I'm not here to just say, oh, that girl was a pain. Why didn't you? You may be thinking, watching this, well, why didn't you just dump her, jettison her, get out? And I did struggle with that. All 3 dates. This date was no different from the first 2. I mean, I do know that Russian girls are harder work, so you've got to be more patient. And I guess there's a part of me that was like, well, isn't this what we're here to do? Isn't this what the project is all about? I'm about getting good at this stuff, dating and seduction. And it's about those challenging girls who are hot and attractive. If you start throwing in the towel in a superficially rational way and saying, "Oh well, she's a bitch," or "she's a princess," or, well, I mean, isn't that what you're in the hunt for? You want a hot princess, you want an attractive girl, you expect hot, attractive girls to be, sweet as apple pie. Few of them are. And anyway, the whole point is that you're learning skills to deal with the challenges and, in this instance, the frame test that a girl is subjecting you to. Did I win this particular battle? I didn't feel as though it had gone particularly well, but at least after a very difficult start, I'd steadied the ship. And so, you know, I've certainly taken that away. And after, in the flight on the way back, I did go through Kezia Noble's book. We read all these dating and seduction pick-up books. We don't actually work at them and apply them. We never really remember what they're saying to us. So I did actually go through these 9 points in the Kezia Noble system and write notes on the aeroplane as I was flying back to Poland. So there you go. I hope you enjoyed that story. You know, it's the difficult ones that from which you learn most of all. Do buy my book. The full story of Russian Svetlana will be in that book, and who knows, maybe it will have a fun and funky climax. That book, by the way, is $1 in 12 parts, 52 first dates. I'm just about to release part 2 as a Kindle, just as a Kindle on Amazon. Okay, guys. Until next time, well, I'll be following up in the next few days with the dream date that was the precursor to this one, that story.